I am so happy to have my next guest on the show, Audra Queen. Yes, that is her real name. Believe me, I've asked. It is so rock star. I absolutely love it. Now, Audra is a personal development and transformation coach. She's also the founder and CEO of the Dance CEO Coach, established in 2018. She's got a bunch of credentials, degrees, so much experience under her belt. She's also the professor of dance at the University of Southern Mississippi, and she's the producer and host of the Dance CEO podcast, which I have also been interviewed on. And so I had to get Audra on my show as well. Look, it's so wonderful to speak to someone who is such a leader in the dance space, but also really taps into the mindset piece and focuses on how people can go from that survival mode in our industry to really thriving. And so this conversation goes on a million tangents, but I absolutely love that because it's so easy. It's so easy to talk to Audra. We have a good time. We really do. And I think you're going to get lots of value from this chat as well. Now, I want to mention that both Audra and myself are going to be presenting at Studio Owner Profit Palooza 2024. Now, this has got a phenomenal lineup of, dance industry experts, and you're going to absolutely love it. I encourage you to get your free ticket now. I've got a link in the show notes. This event is about maximizing your studio's earnings and minimizing your CEO workload so you can make more and stress less. Sounds like a fun time. It's happening late July. It's a 2-day virtual event for studio owners. It's now free. So grab your ticket. Like I said, that link is in the show notes. And we hope to see you there at Studio Owner Profit Palooza. But anyway, that was a side note. Let's jump into the show as we talk about how we can really reframe from surviving to thriving with Audra Queen. Hello and welcome to Studio Biz and All That Jazz. I'm your performing arts business coach and host, Josephine Lancuba. This show is designed to bring you inspiration, information, and the instruments you need to create and grow the studio biz of your dreams. I will bring you a mix of solo episodes as well as interviews where I tap into the minds of industry experts. My career started as a performer over 2 decades ago. I later became a speaker, theatrical producer, and talent manager, as well as having a successful teaching career in singing, drama, and dance. 10 years into my professional journey, I became a mama of 2, and with a baby on my hip, opened up my very own performing arts studio. From hardship and humble beginnings to 4 studio locations and a multi-6-figure performing arts biz, I know how to attract students and keep them coming back for more. And in the show, I will share with you my experiences to help you thrive and fast track your path to success. I know you have a spark inside of you with dreams and goals for the future. As your coach and mentor, I'm here to help you step into your limelight and be a cheerleader in your ear each and every week. So get ready to be entertained and inspired as we talk studio biz and all that jazz. Welcome, beautiful Audra Queen, to my podcast today. It's been a long time in the making, and I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, and I was on your podcast a while ago. We chatted on the Dance CEO podcast, so it's lovely to have you on my show now. And I'd love to just, talk about all the beautiful things that you do in the industry. But before we deep dive into all of that fun stuff, why don't you tell our listeners at home what it is that you do? Who are you? Who are you, Audra?
I'm Audra Queen. I am CEO and founder of the Dance CEO Coach, and I support dance business owners, leaders, entrepreneurs to help them learn to thrive personally first and professionally second, to bring back into balance being a human first and dancer second.
I love that so much. Do you, when you say leaders in dance, can you just clarify exactly what sort of types of people you typically serve in the industry when it comes to your services?
So many dance studio owners, leadership in dance companies, organizations, and that's why I leave it kind of vague because it really is anyone who helps, the dance world move forward in a leadership capacity, I serve them.
Yeah,
So
amazing. Tell me about your story that led you to dance. Like how did you get started really?
with my business specifically, or just like my life
Let's
dance
start
story?
with the beautiful journey of you as a dancer, and then we'll jump into business as well.
Okay. The beginning was very, very much like many others. I was born dancing. The joke always was I danced everywhere. I never ran anywhere. So my parents put me in dance class at the age of 5 as a Christmas gift and thinking it might be a phase. And the joke was on them. I'm still doing it to 39 years old. And I did train pre-professionally and dance briefly professionally as a ballet dancer, but professionally in many capacities in the dance world. I have my undergraduate degree in performance and musical theater, and also my master's degree in choreography and teaching dance. But I never planned on going to college. So that was also kind of a plot twist in my life. And so I now am a master teacher. I am a part-time adjunct dance faculty member. I used to do it full time, but it's not my cup of tea to do it full time. And run my own business.
I love that. And so, when it comes to education versus being the performer, what was always your calling, or did you get an opportunity to do both?
I got an opportunity to do both. I always wanted to just be a professional dancer. Um, Unbeknownst at the time, I've lived my entire life with ADHD and autism, but I wasn't diagnosed until the last few years. And so I really struggled as a professional dancer because I had all these challenges. I didn't understand what they were. And I really struggled to stay focused and committed for like whole days of rehearsal and all of that for being in a company. And so my professional dance career in like the traditional sense was very short lived. I just didn't have the mental willpower to power through that. And I understand now why, but I did continue to dance professionally as a guest artist. I was a co-artistic director of a dance company for a period of time. And I just and I love choreography. So I kind of started pursuing more that route and teaching, and I still perform occasionally. But yeah, it's just a myriad of things that I love to do.
I think it's interesting that, and you're comfortable with the conversation
Yeah.
around ADHD and being on the spectrum, all these sorts of things. I think it's an interesting conversation because a lot of women of our generation are
Mhm.
starting to get these diagnoses. And some people are saying,
Yes.
oh, doctors are throwing around diagnoses. But really, what's happening is I think a lot of women were potentially overlooked due to their gender. And it was, ADHD was a boy thing. Or what's your take on that?
Yes. The understanding the stigma of what ADHD looked like was very much the traditional sense we think about it, very outgoing, over hyper, can't sit still, can't focus. And I could talk about this for days. This is something I've really been diving into and supporting people in now is a better understanding of what it means to be a woman with ADHD. But in true sense, there's actually 7 types of ADHD due to a study that was published back in 2014. I just forgot his name. But if you Google 7 types of ADHD, you'll find it. The most common are, the type that we don't really think about it, which is active, the hyperactive, but actually women are in their minds mainly. We're not physically as hyperactive. Of course, there are some who are, which is one of the main reasons why it was overlooked. And so it's not something people just woke up one day and had. You can only be formally diagnosed with it if you've had the symptoms since infancy and childhood. So yeah, I think it's just more education and awareness and more women spending more times with themselves. I think during COVID, the number of women diagnosed with ADHD doubled from 2020, from 2000 to 2000 and sorry, I said that wrong. From 2020 to 2022, the amount of women diagnosed with ADHD doubled. And I don't think it was a coincidence. That's when people were spending time by themselves in quarantine and lockdown and starting to have all these things come to fruition. So
I would be, and it wasn't my intention to go down this
that's
rabbit
fine.
hole, but I am very interested in this because we are seeing a spike of diagnoses in our students as studio owners, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that as a performer, and I find this interesting that you didn't realize that, this was what was happening within your body. So you had a short-lived career due to those challenges associated. Do you think that had you have recognized what was happening, or had it have been more, there have been more education amongst the public, maybe as there is developing now, that your experience as a performer would have been different, or you could have had a longer career, or you think it would have impacted you the same way?
I absolutely think it would have been a completely different experience. One, I would have understood myself enough to advocate for myself. And
Mm.
two, there would have been a better chance to set up circumstance or even just understanding of why maybe behavior showed up. Like, for example, in my pre-professional days, there'd be days where I was very hyperactive in the sense of talking a lot. And I don't know if you can tell or not, I'm really excited right now. So I'm actually talking pretty fast, but I'm trying to slow down. But I would sometimes have the inability to control impulsive desires to just talk a lot. I would get kicked out of dance class periodically because I couldn't control my talking. And it wasn't for lack of disrespect. It was purely my love and excitement to be in dance. And that's how it would show up.
Mm.
And my understanding now of like a common trait is short-term memory challenges. And so like inability to retain some choreography on the spot, I would need extra time to practice it. And so sometimes that would be a challenge in audition process. Versus if I was able to say, hi, I'm so-and-so. These are literal challenges that I have, but I know that I'm capable of doing these things and this is how I can work with them. So there's an awareness. And the example I like to give is when you see someone missing an arm, exceptions are automatically made. Like where you see someone missing an arm, you just know that you're going to give them grace on things that when you expect somebody with two arms to show up. And it's the same with people who have mental challenges in any capacity, right? ADHD, my brain is literally wired differently and it will not change. And same with my autism, social interactions and challenges and such. So absolutely, I would have been able to know how to show up in a better social capacity, or at least own it and say hi, which I do now. When I first meet people, hi, I'm Audra. Just so you know, I'm autistic. I have ADHD, and it gives me grace to show up me as myself fully, whether they know how to hold space for that or not, versus me trying to be something I'm not. And then all of us don't win regardless. So I do believe it would have changed my journey. I could have been more upfront. I could have said, hey, I can absolutely do these things. We just need to tweak how the information is retained for me or how we approach some of this, just so I can still get to the end of the game like everyone else. But I need some slightly different accommodations to get there.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. So I think for people that are listening, understanding that when someone does advocate for themselves and comes to you with that information, that you just, you're open to that information, and you can actually make those minor adjustments for the sake of inclusivity. Like, be inclusive. It's not hard. Listen, be open, and let people advocate for themselves in the space. What about when we're dealing with people that are teaching children who may not be able to advocate for themselves, but the parent tells us, hey, my child, has XYZ happening, yada, yada. And they give you that information and that's it. And then the child's in your room and there's a bit of mayhem. Because it can feel like a little bit of mayhem sometimes if you're unfamiliar or not experienced in that space. How does a teacher work through that scenario with a child, do you think? What's the best advice you could give to teachers?
I think that we need to retain our core selves as creatives and keep that mindset in the classroom structure. I've been an educator now for 15 plus years. And so some of the things I learned without realizing how impactful they are, period, regardless of the person you're working with. But almost always when a child is not following directions, and they're not being malicious, right? Because it's very rare that they're being intentionally mean. They're just struggling to follow directions. It's because there's a very limited expectation that's put on them that they just don't have the capacity to meet, or you don't know how to widen it because you have an expectation placed upon you that how we're supposed to have things run in a traditional sense in a classroom, right? Like handed down generation to generation that a perfect dance classroom is everyone lines up. We all put our hands on our hips and we all plie and tendu to the dot, right? And we smile and we hold a basket of puppies. And that's fantastic end goal. But no, there's no two people who ever function the same, and to allow someone to say, I need to do this facing the other way, or I'm going to turn sideways because that's how my brain is processing you right now from that angle, to let yourself be open to that. And unless they're being truly malicious and like super disruptive, you don't need to call them out or try to make them perfect, because if they're still striving to do what you're asking, you're doing the right thing. Also, it's okay, when I say creative, to change your tactic. If it's very clear that the majority of your kids are responding to one person having a lot more energy and standing still is not going to be successful, change up what you're doing. Like, just be creative. Use your creative problem solving skills. You're creative at heart. Trust your instinct. And if you're getting frustrated, it's not them. It's you having a hard time holding space for them. It's your own personal issue, having an inability to allow them to be them in those moments. So you have to take a deep breath.
So much. And like, regardless of whatever, whether they have ADHD or it's just kids in a room, I think that is such good advice. And you got to be able to, as a teacher, read the room. And even as an entertainer, like, even if you're a party host, okay, let's go that sort of thing. You've got to read the room, just because you've been given the script as a party host and we play this game and then we do this and then we do, and they're not into it and halfway you're losing them, then you got to change the script, right? So it's all about that. And I think sometimes that comes with experience though. Like, some people just have it. Some people have initiative and can read a room. Others can't. And so it comes with practice and really, I guess, seeing those little trigger points where you're like, oh, I think I'm starting to lose them, and having some things planned and up your sleeve and what to do when that happens. But yes, I love that. That is so true. I know that you've gone from being this, wonderful young student into becoming a dancer, a teacher, which you still teach today. But you're also a business coach and a leader. Tell me about the decision from going from dancer teacher to, hey, I'm going to help other dance professionals, and why and how that even came about.
So this is going to get even more personal, which I've learned one of my social things is I don't really understand boundaries. So I'm completely comfortable sharing all the things.
Yeah.
So here it is. In 2018, before COVID even happened, I was divorcing my ex-husband at that time of 8 years. At that point, I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And up until that point, I had been doing professional things in the dance world, right? That's my main source of income. But all of a sudden, I was at the situation where I became a part-time single mom because I shared custody with my ex. And I could have gone the traditional route of going and getting a 9-to-5 job to make financial ends meet. And I do want to backtrack for a second and say, at the point of the divorce, I had now been unemployed for about a year, taking care of my daughter, who was an infant who had unexpected heart failure. So I went from like full-on dance career to all of a sudden full-time medical caregiver for my daughter. So when the divorce happened, I had been not working for a year and I needed to figure that out. So to keep going into the question you asked me, I knew I could either just go get that 9-to-5 job and be miserable after spending my entire life pursuing a dance career, or I could take some time and ponder and acknowledge that I had this amazing opportunity of a blank slate in my life, that I could choose to how I was going to move forward. That would be long-term choices versus just a short-term meeting a need. And I am religious. I do believe in God, and however you relate to that, universe, higher power. I spent a lot of time in prayer and contemplation with God and was like, hey, what's up? What's next step? And one evening I was sitting at Starbucks and I was journaling and just trying to process all the emotions, all the things. And I got this very strong, clear, crystal clear thought process that I needed to start teaching dance lessons online virtually and start a business doing that. And there's two things to this. One was COVID hadn't happened yet. So virtual dance lessons wasn't a commonplace thing yet.
No.
And two, I had never in my life even considered running a dance business because in my mind that was a studio and I didn't have a desire to do that. But it checked all my boxes. It met all my needs as a newly single mom. It met my desires to continue to grow as a dancer. It excited me with the new prospect. And that night I Googled how to start a business in Louisiana. I was like, here we go. And within a few months, I had my first virtual dance client as an adult and very quickly expanded from that. And so when COVID hit, all of a sudden I was an instant resource to help the dance world shift their dance businesses to online virtual platforms overnight. And I didn't try to do it for money because in my mind, I wasn't a business coach. I'm just doing this thing that can help you do the thing. So I kept offering all these free workshops, so just like multiple times a day, 30-minute workshops. Here's how to teach online, because we all know that was very difficult. And I'd already figured that out by choice and loved doing it willingly before COVID hit. And shortly after that, I started getting a Venmo notification of money and gratitude for helping them keep their business open, or hiring me to train them and their whole team. And very quickly, I shifted into this pivot of becoming a dance business coach, which was never even, I mean, if you'd asked me a year before, that would have been like, I do not know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it just progressed from there, because alongside that journey of my divorce and moving forward, I also was pursuing myself in a personal development way. And then that started to marry into what I was doing as a coach. And I started to doing mindset coaching and business coaching. And now we're where we are today, 4 solid years of being a mindset coach, business coach, all the things. And I absolutely love it. And it's all because I said yes to a very crystal clear thought back in 2018 that couldn't begin to comprehend this is where I'd be from that decision I made.
Yeah. And it's really interesting, isn't it? Because you weren't to know that COVID would happen within 24 months. Right. And so that's so true that a lot of businesses had to jump into virtual overnight. I know I was one of them. I remember we were doing a musical, actually, because I had a musical theatre studio, and we were doing Peter Pan, stage production with the kids. And literally within a couple of days, Peter Pan the musical turned into Peter Pan Breaks the Internet, and we re-scripted everything. We turned it into a virtual production, and it was a self-taped musical made by and starring kids, and we edited the scenes they recorded from home. And it was really awesome what we created, but it was scary and it was mayhem, and it was frightening from a business owner's perspective, because we just didn't know what was next. I imagine you probably encountered a lot of business owners doing incredible things online, but also really scared. What was that time like?
It was actually really interesting to have a front row seat to that, because I very quickly started to recognize, and it stayed true to what I was observing, which was those people who saw the opportunity to go online as a creative growth opportunity, their doors stayed open through COVID. And those who were like begrudging about it and drug their feet and were really negative about it and really just struggled and like just took the mentality that like no one has any money to do this and we'll just offer classes for free, or like a lot of those businesses shut down. And so, yeah, I know everyone was exhausted and everyone was just fighting to figure out, to make sense of all the things, right? The fear of the medical side of it, and the personal livelihood side of it, and our art and our love, and what does that mean? But the people who tapped into, once again, their creative course, which is what we are, and it shows up as being dancers, had a lot more success and realized that they were just adding to their creative toolboxes to help them expand their skill sets as business owners, human beings, artists. And it's been really beautiful to see some of those businesses I had a call with in, April, May of 2020 to now, and they're just flourishing. And, there's been pivots since then, right? They've revamped things after all that happened, but because they chose to see that as a learning and growing opportunity, it was transformational for them.
Yeah, and I think it was transformational for us because we obviously lost many students. There's some kids that just couldn't move to online, especially the really little ones. But, we retained about 40% of our clients during COVID. And when we reopened, we got our numbers back pretty quickly. And so I think it was that staying power. We kept in communication during that period as well with the people that had left us. Like we were sending them Easter cards and birthday cards and just reminding them that we were there. And so that was pretty powerful. But it was hard. It was very, very hard. What came out of it, though, was a flourishing business. Like you said, we also introduced new innovative ways to teach private singing lessons, which was virtually. And so we had like a self-booking service for our students, which we called the Singing Hub. And we kept that. We kept that because it made sense. And it was such a great upsell that was low cost, no rent. Teachers could pick their schedules on a calendar and just clients could come in and book classes under a membership model. So good. And that business I was able to sell just this year with that as part of the sale. We've got this amazing Singing Hub program, which is virtual and a great upsell. Like it's all part of it, And I just think the staying power, but, not everyone has the staying power and you have to appreciate that too, I suppose. What do you think? So that was the challenge then, which inspired you to move into this space. What do you think is the new challenge? What is the challenge now? Because I can, like, as a business coach myself, I am seeing there's the fear starting to creep in, a scarcity mindset. I don't know what the US market is like, but in Australia, inflation is a big thing, and it's really hitting homes. I mean, grocery bills are, 30% more, people's mortgages are increasing, all of this sort of stuff is happening. Are you having that same sort of flow-on effect post-COVID with now all of this inflation? Like, is that happening in the US as well? And what's the challenge you're seeing around that?
Yes, absolutely. We're having the same experiences with inflation and such. I don't think the scarcity mindset ever left. I think it was amplified during COVID, and then unfortunately, my experience in the dance world is the starving artist mentality. It's just because it's not hereditary. It's generationally passed down, right? We're taught, especially as women in the dance world, right? There's only so many spaces. No one has money. Say yes to any opportunity, regardless if it pays you or not. You have to fight for it and you'll get a little bit out of it, but you love it. So just sacrifice anyways. And we automatically attach that to our core and our passion, which is dance. And I don't think that left. I think it was magnified during COVID by so many. And then there was those who were like, okay, buckle down, get through this, which can be considered, it was a traumatic experience, right? It was a survival mode for everybody. And when you are in a traumatic experience in survival mode, you're just in the moment. You're not like, how is this going to impact me long term? How do I feel? It just amplifies whatever your belief system is. So coming out of it wasn't like, oh, that went away. It was just now you're on the other side of not healing from the trauma of trying to survive COVID. And in the dance world with that scarcity mindset, I think it's still very prevalent. And now people are just reattaching it to like you just shared, the concern with the inflation process and the belief that no one has money, yes, no one can afford dance classes, and that no one's going to show up. But the truth is, if that was the case, the dance world wouldn't have made it through COVID. There are always going to be people, yes, who choose to invest their finances elsewhere, but there will always be people who also choose to invest their finances in things that matter to them of importance at that point, which would be the arts and the dance classes for their children and themselves and whatnot. If it was true that there was no money, the dance world wouldn't have lasted as long as it has for thousands of years. So
yeah, it's true. And the other bit is we have to adjust to the market in some capacity. Like, we can't dismiss it and say it doesn't exist and everyone wants to still buy. Like, okay, there's a challenge. How do we overcome the challenge? Maybe for the next 12 months, let's tighten our belts on some other areas. For example, let's look at our expenses and see, what are we spending on that maybe we don't need to spend over the next 12 months, things like that. There are ways to combat this time as well. But I agree with you. There's always someone that wants to do a class or wants to see a show, or, I just think it is moving through an amplified scarcity mindset. I like that you said that. It is true. It is actually true that the scarcity mindset's always been there in the industry. It's just that it's amplified through periods of time. So what do you think in this particular market people can do to overcome this challenge that they're facing right now? Like, what would be something that you would advise and say, hey, this might be a step forward?
I would actually advise this no matter what the market is, which is, I always say this, but your professional dance career is only as successful as you are doing personally. So no matter what the market is, if you are not taking care of yourself first as a human and then addressing your career is only going to be successful as you're doing. So if you're sitting in a place of personal stress regarding finances like that, that is directly going to impact how you show up to be successful or not in your business. And so whether the inflation is happening or we were in COVID or for some odd reason your enrollment numbers are low, but there's no like direct connection, if you're constantly in a place of putting all of your success and outcome based on those numbers and not how you as a human being are doing first and how you could respond to those, it's never going to go well. And I think about shifting into a place of being proactive instead of reactive, not waiting for things to happen to you for you to then show up, But for you, doing as much as you can for what you have control over, so that when things do happen outside of your control, you yourself are okay because you know how you're then going to respond because you were proactive first. And that's not a scarcity approach. And if you live in this scarcity approach, you live in fear of, and you wait to react to things happening to you. It takes a lot of internal work, mindset work. Sometimes it takes therapy. There's so many things to shift to where you at your core know that no matter what happens to you externally, you will be okay because you took care of yourself internally first. And that's not an easy thing. If you're hearing this and you're always in a place of stress and worry, you're like, that's not possible. Total BS, right? Like, I totally get that. I actually fully used to like buy into the scarcity mindset. But the people that I see consistently not only thriving like professionally, but first personally are the ones who've done the work to start shifting that narrative for themselves. The people that start to see that the dance world is a community and supportive, it's not competition, that they recognize that we're offering service and value to others, but not in spite of ourselves, but because we are so full now personally that we have so much more value to offer others and help others on their journey. That's when the things are shifting. And so when these markets are changing, I'm not losing sleep at night because I know there'll be other ways to work with this because I, at my core as a human being, I'm doing well. And I know that's like not something you can just like walk away from this podcast and be like, got it, makes sense, light bulb on, life's changed. But just starting to believe that and think it's possible to shift into that way of living, that's the first step to being in a game-changing moment in your life.
Is that what you mean then when you say, because one of the taglines I see in a lot of your content is stop surviving and start thriving? Is that what you actually mean? Is it that mindset piece that you refer to? What does that mean to you? Stop surviving and start thriving.
Absolutely. That is exactly what it means.
Yeah.
Well, I always ask on my podcast, the last question I ask all of my guests is, what does it mean to be the CEO of your life and your business? And I ask that because that's exactly what we all are. And we forget to even recognize that we are the CEO of our business, let alone the CEO of our life. And to me, I used to think that when someone said they were thriving, that involved a large bank account, right? Like you had all the money in the world. My financial situation hasn't changed much from my divorce in 2018 to 6 years later. But I am a completely different person. And I feel like I'm thriving every day that I wake up because I recognize that I am living a life that I'm choosing to create for myself. I'm fulfilling my life's purpose I've become clear on. And I'm doing things to where I don't ever go to bed like resenting anything and wishing like my life was different. I'm choosing where I'm at. I absolutely love what I'm doing. There are challenges. It's not easy, but every single day I am so grateful that I get to help others. I feel very fulfilled and I continue to grow in that process versus how I used to be, which was every day, first thing I do is check my bank account, stress how am I going to pay the bills? Where's that money coming from? I'm just trying to get clients and all those kinds of head down in the dirt kind of situations. That's not an enjoyable way to live and it's not sustainable. So going from stopping surviving, which just every moment to moment, what's in your bank account, what's the next enrollment, to how can I live in a way that's sustainable, that no matter what are those, those question marks that come and go, I'm still consistent and I still enjoy my life.
And you can see that actually that stress and that worry and that survival mode, I suppose, as you put it, in a lot of these community Facebook groups and stuff, when people talk about, oh, I just lost this one student and it's really stressful for them and it's one student, and you just think, okay, you're obviously in survival mode when that one student means so much. It's heavy. It shouldn't be that heavy when someone moves on, I think. So I just think that that's really interesting. And I love that you talk about thriving, not just in a money perspective, but actually from, a spiritual perspective and a mindset perspective. I think that's really key.
Can I add to that really fast?
Yeah, love you to.
So my personal experience having gone to therapy myself, and I coach others and all of that and receive coaching. When you are so stressed about one client stepping away, one student stepping away, it's because you've taken it personally and you have not let that healthy place be, which is so normal in the arts world where you think that your identity is your art form versus you're Josephine, who's running a business, and that person no longer aligned with what your business model is, and they've chosen to go elsewhere. And it's not about Josephine, it's about the business model. And maybe there could be something to be learned from there. It's totally healthy to observe and say, is there something I could have done better? But it's not that I failed as a person because this one person chose to leave. And you're able to actually have a healthy boundary, which is not a common phrase in the dance world, boundaries, something we're always working on, to say, it does stink that I lost them. I did invest a lot of time and energy and I cared for their well-being, but it clearly wasn't a healthy relationship where it was mutual, or it was a healthy relationship to point, but then they decided they needed to go to a different relationship. And they did. And if it's a healthy relationship, you can say, that kind of sucked. It definitely was a part of my life. What can I learn from it? How can I apply it moving forward to the other people that are choosing to be in a relationship with me? Total different dialogue, different approach. I learned a lot about healthy relationships by choice after my divorce. And I was like, what do they look like? And I realized healthy relationships attach to every aspect of your life. Everyone you work with, everyone, even just us talking, having a healthy relationship, mutually respectful in our professions, in your loved ones, with yourself. I know we weren't planning on going that direction, but here we are talking about healthy relationships.
Yeah. And it matters.
Yep.
It matters. I like the perspective of relationships, actually. And it's funny because, we talk about our customers and loving up our customers and all the things, but it is a relationship, at some level. And so people choose different relationships at different times, and that's okay. I like that. Definitely a boundaries issue. I think definitely that's a very good point. So speaking of all the things,
I know this is a prime example of somebody with ADHD. We've talked about so many things and it just feels so normal for me. I'm like, let's not talk about one thing. That's too much.
Look, to be honest, I love conversation. I love to flow through conversation. So this has been a great chat. I'd love to ask you, what does success look like to you in your life? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I think I shared a little bit earlier with the whole tying it to thriving. To me, success is when I'm regularly striving to grow personally and that I see results from that, even when failure is attached, because I can learn from that. And that I'm seeing that efforts I'm putting in have an outcome, whether it's personally for me, internally, externally, or for those I'm impacting. It's any type of step up, level up, inch forward, and effort that is put in. To me, that's success.
Interesting. And who or what inspires you most?
I don't think it's any one person. I think it's anyone who chooses to continue to always try to become the best versions of themselves possible. I don't have just one mentor. I don't have just one coach I've learned from, I don't just have one religious entity. It's anyone who chooses to try to become the best version of themselves possible while being humble in the process, trying to figure out their life's purpose and be open to serving and offering value in a healthy capacity.
Do your clients ever inspire you, like when you're working?
Absolutely. I'm always in awe that I have a front row seat to someone choosing to better themselves. Like I never take it for granted that someone's like, I'm choosing to invest myself emotionally with time, with finances, to spend time with me as their coach, to help them move forward in a way that they could have done on their own eventually or not at all. And I'm always sorry, motorcycle is going by. I'm always in awe that when someone decides to show up for themselves and then they come back to me after putting an effort of what I've guided them to do and they choose to take it even further and the outcomes. I always think I have an idea of the growth that they're going to achieve when we work together. And I don't know, I'm always constantly surprised at how much further they went with it and the outcomes that happen.
That's awesome. So what's next, Audra? What's happening? What's next on your agenda?
So actually, I just announced something very new for me, and it was actually a very vulnerable thing for me to get ready to release, but I just announced, and starting this week, I'm hosting a 5-series workshop called ADHD plus Dance, because there's not much conversation about it, but so many people in the dance world most likely are and don't know that they have ADHD or neurodivergent in some capacity, and the dance world is set up in such a structured atypical way that does not serve the majority of us. And I want to help increase the dialogue, expand inclusivity in a very simple way, and uncover many different myriads of how ADHD plus dance can be attainable for anyone, whether for themselves, for others, working with colleagues, running a business with it, teaching children with it, how to show up and be a performer with it. And so I've just launched a 5-part workshop series for that and continue to move forward in that direction.
That's awesome. So how can people find out about that or find you online? Where should they go?
Absolutely. So I am on Instagram at the Dance CEO Coach. You can find that information specifically on my Instagram page or the danceceocoach.com/ADHD+dance. And Facebook as well. You can email me with questions about it. I can send you direct information at the danceceocoach@gmail. There's a theme running here.
Yeah. Excellent. We'll pop those links in the show notes for everyone.
Yes.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And as I mentioned in the intro, we will be presenting both of us at Studio Owner Profit Palooza Summit. How exciting.
Yes. Cannot wait.
Going to be a blast.
So good.
Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And, having a chat with you is so cool. It's just so easy. And I love that. I love chats like that the most. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Josephine. I loved being here with you and your audience.
This episode was brought to you by my signature group coaching program, Studio Biz Success, an amazing and accessible online educational platform for performing arts studio owners designed to help you grow your business with confidence and get your results. Check it out at josephinelancuba.com along with other great industry resources to help you leap into the studio biz you deserve. If you love this episode, be sure to share it with your friends. You can tag me on social media at Josephine Lancuba and give it a review. Your support helps the show to grow so I can continue to provide you with useful, informative content. I'm Josephine Lancuba, your biggest cheerleader. Thanks for listening and shine bright.